Chosen one, hear me clearly. This isn't coincidence that you found this message today. As 2026 approaches, heaven is thundering with activity over your life. Something profound is shifting in the spiritual atmosphere around you, not in months, not someday, but right now as you listen. The divine marking on your soul is being activated in ways that will shock those who dismissed you. What you've been experiencing isn't random. The tears at midnight, the unexplained heaviness. Each was permitted for a purpose that's about to become clear. God has been watching as you carried burdens silently, as you smiled through pain, as you questioned whether your calling was real or imagined. Heaven recorded every moment. You chose faith when giving up seemed easier. The pressure you felt toward the end of 2025 wasn't punishment, it was preparation. The spiritual weight wasn't meant to crush you, but to strengthen you. God doesn't build shallow vessels for deep purposes. The depth of your suffering has been creating capacity for what's coming next. Chosen one, before we continue, pause for a moment. The fact that your spirit is already resonating with these words is confirmation. Don't just watch silently. Subscribe now so you don't miss the revelations God sends your way. The enemy works hardest to distract you precisely when heaven is trying to speak directly to your situation. There's a divine rearrangement happening behind the scenes of your life. Angelic forces are shifting circumstances, redirecting paths, and clearing obstacles that have blocked your progression for years. Certain doors are closing permanently, not as loss, but as protection. God is removing access points the enemy once used to drain your spiritual energy. Some people will no longer have access to your life, not because you've become proud, but because your assignment has outgrown their capacity to understand it. Their limitations were becoming your ceiling. What feels like rejection is actually divine selection. That loneliness you've been feeling? It's not abandonment, it's insulation. God has been shielding you from spiritual contamination while aligning you for elevation. He's been protecting your oil while preparing your throne. Can you feel it? The atmosphere around your destiny is charged with expectation. Heaven is leaning in. Angels are positioning. Your name is being mentioned in realms you cannot see. What was delayed is suddenly gaining momentum. Chosen one. The marking on your life is becoming more visible. Those with spiritual eyes can see it. Those with discernment can sense it. The divine fingerprint of God is becoming undeniable, and 2026 will be the year many finally recognize what heaven has always known about you. Let me speak to what you've been carrying. The weight that sits heavy on your chest some mornings. The burden that makes ordinary days feel like climbing mountains. I know about the questions that haunt you at 3 a.m. when everyone else is sleeping. Why me? Why this calling? Why this much opposition? Your sensitivity has been both your greatest gift and your deepest struggle. You feel what others miss. You notice what others overlook. You weep over things that others scroll past. This heightened awareness isn't a flaw, it's a feature of your divine design. God crafted you with spiritual receptors others simply don't possess. The isolation has been real, hasn't it? Feeling different even in crowded rooms. Having insights you can't share because they sound strange to casual believers. Sensing dangers others laugh off as paranoia. Seeing potential others call delusion. You've questioned your sanity more times than you'd care to admit. What nobody told you about being chosen is how lonely the path would feel. Friends have fallen away. Family members have misunderstood. Mentors have reached their limits in guiding you. Some relationships dissolved, not because of conflict, but because of calling your frequency simply shifted beyond their capacity to connect. You've endured without applause, persevered without witnesses, fought battles with no victory parades. The enemy targeted your mind with thoughts of abandonment, telling you that if God had truly chosen you, the path wouldn't be this difficult. The lie found fertile ground in your moments of exhaustion. But here's what heaven wants you to understand. Carrying weight develops spiritual muscle. Just as physical resistance builds physical strength, spiritual resistance builds spiritual capacity. You weren't carrying that weight alone, you were carrying it with unseen assistance. Every time you thought you couldn't take another step but somehow did, that was divine support beneath your arms. Your tears were collected, your prayers were recorded, your questions were honored. Nothing was wasted, not the confusion, not the doubt, not the pain. God was extracting precious materials from the pressure, creating something in you that couldn't be formed any other way. The weight you carried wasn't meaningless suffering, it was meaningful preparation. The silence wasn't absence, it was God focusing your hearing. The darkness wasn't abandonment, it was God developing your vision. You weren't forgotten, you were being forged. Chosen one. What intensified against you in recent months wasn't random, it was strategic. The warfare became more aggressive because the enemy could sense divine timing approaching. Your destiny started giving off spiritual signals that alerted dark forces to your approaching elevation. Listen carefully. The enemy doesn't waste resources on those going nowhere. The level of opposition you faced reveals the level of your assignment. When attacks come from unexpected directions, sudden health issues, financial reversals, relationships fracturing without warning, recognize the pattern. These are desperate attempts to derail what heaven has ordained. The mental fog that settled over you without explanation, the unusual fatigue that hit you in waves, the doubts that invaded your most confident moments, the old wounds that suddenly reopened, all calculated, all timed, all aimed at making you question your spiritual sanity just before your greatest breakthrough. What you survived wasn't random, it was targeted. The monitoring spirits assigned to your life observed your patterns, studied your weaknesses, and deployed customized attacks. They watched for your vulnerable moments, your tired seasons, your lonely periods, and struck with precision. The battle for your mind intensified because your mind is where your authority begins. Confusion is the enemy's favorite weapon against chosen vessels. But here's what the opposition didn't understand. Each attack strengthened your spiritual immune system. Each wave of warfare developed your discernment. The delays weren't denials, they were divine recalculations, setting you up for greater impact. The fact that you're still standing, still believing, still moving forward despite everything unleashed against you is supernatural evidence. It proves heaven's hand has been supporting you even when you couldn't feel it. What should have destroyed you merely decorated your testimony. Remember those moments when overwhelming peace suddenly flooded your spirit for no apparent reason? When strength returned without explanation? When clarity broke through the confusion? Those were divine interventions, moments when angels received orders concerning you. The warfare intensified because the enemy sensed timing. Opposition always increases when major shifts are imminent. The greater the destiny, the greater the resistance before breakthrough. What happens in the spiritual realm precedes what manifests in the natural. The attacks weren't punishment, they were preparation for promotion, and the very fact you withstood them qualifies you for what comes next. The painful separations you experienced were not rejections, they were divine interventions. God began removing people from your inner circle not to hurt you, but to heal you. Not to leave you isolated, but to leave you insulated. There's a profound difference. Those relationships that suddenly dissolved without explanation, those connections that grew mysteriously distant, those friendships that couldn't survive your spiritual growth. Each separation was heaven's protection. Each goodbye was guided. Each closed door was compassion in disguise. Listen. I know you're watching quietly, just taking everything in. But chosen ones like you don't come across these messages by accident. If this is touching your soul, hit that subscribe button. Don't keep walking through spiritual warfare alone when a whole family of chosen ones is right here with you. God is establishing boundaries around your calling that others cannot cross. Some people were permitted in your life for a season, but not authorized for your next level. Their assignment in your story reached its conclusion. Their capacity to understand your journey reached its limit. Their presence began depleting what God was depositing. This divine insulation isn't punishment, it's promotion. It's God creating sacred space around you where new growth can happen uncontaminated. It's heaven removing competing voices so you can hear divine direction more clearly. Not everyone meant well, even among those who spoke well. There were hidden assignments, masked motives, and concealed agendas operating through familiar faces. People who carried jealousy but performed friendship. People who resented your calling while requesting your prayers. People who celebrated your setbacks while speaking words of encouragement. God is separating you from environments that drain your oil, from atmospheres that dim your light, from connections that dilute your purpose. The loneliness you felt wasn't abandonment, it was alignment. God was creating distance between you and destiny detractors who couldn't be confronted, only removed. This sacred separation serves another purpose too. It protects those who cannot go where you're heading. Some relationships ended because continuing them would have damaged the other person. Your growth became a mirror they weren't ready to look into. Your elevation would have triggered their insecurity. Your assignment would have activated their jealousy. Divine insulation works both ways, protecting your purpose from contamination while protecting others from calling levels they aren't prepared to witness. God's compassion extends to everyone in the story, even those who exit it. The empty spaces around you aren't evidence of failure, they're preparation for replacement. What God removes, God restores with upgrade. As 2026 begins, God is removing the veil from your spiritual eyes. A divine clarity is being released into your life, one that will transform how you see everything around you. What once confused you will suddenly make sense. What once overwhelmed you will become manageable. What once felt like chaos will reveal its hidden order. God is recalibrating your spiritual discernment to operate at levels you've only glimpsed before. The fog that obscured people's true intentions? Lifting. The confusion about which path to take? Dissolving. The uncertainty about who belongs in your inner circle? Evaporating. You'll begin to see people for who they truly are, not through the lens of emotion, but through the lens of revelation. This isn't about becoming harsh or critical. This heightened discernment is a gift of protection. It's heaven equipping you to navigate complex spiritual territories without being wounded by hidden dangers. You'll recognize wolves regardless of what sheep clothing they wear. You'll detect poison no matter how sweetly it's served. Relationships that once left you drained and confused will suddenly become transparent. You'll understand dynamics that puzzled you for years. You'll see manipulation where you once saw mystery. You'll recognize control where you once felt only confusion. This clarity isn't meant to create bitterness, it's meant to establish boundaries. Systems that held you captive through guilt, religious obligation, or fear will lose their power over you. The mental prisons that limited your spiritual growth will dissolve as truth illuminates their false foundations. Lies you've believed about yourself, about God, about your calling, all exposed by this new level of seeing. Some revelations will bring grief as you recognize time and energy invested in what heaven never ordained. Other revelations will bring relief as you finally understand why certain doors remained closed despite your persistent knocking. All revelations will bring freedom as clarity replaces confusion. This is not just about seeing what's wrong. It's also about recognizing what's right. Divine opportunities that were always present but previously invisible to you will suddenly stand out in brilliant detail. People divinely assigned to your purpose whom you overlooked will come into focus. Resources that were always within reach but outside your awareness will become obvious. The veil is lifting not to discourage you but to direct you, not to overwhelm you but to orient you, not to confuse you but to confirm what your spirit has been sensing all along. Type, "I see clearly now," if this message is confirming what's been happening in your spirit. I see you pausing, feeling this message resonating in your spirit. Don't just receive this word alone. If God led you here, it wasn't by accident, it was by divine appointment. Subscribe now if you're tired of walking your chosen path in isolation. This family of spiritual warriors was created for souls like yours who need confirmation, not confusion, in this critical season of your journey. Chosen one, hear this warning clearly. Do not carry old pain into your new season. What happened to you was real. The betrayals cut deep, the rejections left scars. The disappointments crushed expectations. The delays tested your patience beyond what seemed humanly possible. None of this is minimized or dismissed by heaven. But carrying the emotional weight of past wounds into your new season will sabotage what God is birthing. Old hurts create filters that distort how you see new opportunities. Previous betrayals establish patterns of suspicion that contaminate fresh relationships. Unhealed disappointments generate expectations of failure that undermine future successes. This next revelation is only for those ready to be completely free. The enemy wants nothing more than for you to enter 2026 still wounded, still doubting, still questioning your worth, still defending against attacks that ended years ago. He knows that your past pain is his most effective tool for limiting your future impact. Your history becomes his weapon if you refuse to release it. Forgiveness is not approval of what happened. It's not pretending you weren't hurt. It's not relationship restoration with those who wounded you. Forgiveness is freedom from being spiritually tied to events and people that damaged you. It's removing their access to your present and future. It's declaring that what they did may have marked you, but it will not define you. Some emotional residue feels like loyalty to lost dreams, to relationships that ended, to versions of yourself that didn't survive the warfare. Holding on to grief can feel like honoring what mattered, but God is asking you to distinguish between remembering and remaining. You can acknowledge your history without anchoring your identity to it. The spiritual strength needed for your next season cannot coexist with the emotional baggage from your last one. Every memory that still triggers anger, shame, grief, or resentment represents an unresolved attachment that drains energy needed for what's ahead. Release is not forgetting its freedom. It's not denial, it's decision. It's choosing to stop drinking poison while waiting for others to die. It's refusing to allow temporary people to cause permanent damage. It's accepting that while you couldn't control what happened to you, you can control what happens within you. Your healing is not just personal, it's purposeful. What God wants to do through you requires what God is doing in you. As 2026 unfolds, God is recalibrating your spiritual authority. The power you once struggled to access will begin flowing naturally. The prayers that once felt like they hit a ceiling will suddenly break through. The words you speak will carry weight you've never experienced before. This isn't about becoming dominant or controlling. It's about stepping into the authentic influence heaven assigned to you before birth. For too long, you've operated with diminished authority. Past wounds convinced you to shrink. Religious spirits taught you that humility meant making yourself small. False guilt whispered that boldness was pride. The enemy knew that if he could keep you doubting your authority, he could limit your impact. Why did previous prayers seem to go unanswered? Why did declarations that worked for others fall flat when you spoke them? Why did spiritual breakthrough feel accessible to everyone except you? It wasn't lack of faith or hidden sin, as some suggested. It was strategic interference with your developing authority. The enemy deployed specialized opposition against your specific assignment. When you prayed for finances, health issues arose. When health improved, relationships fractured. When relationships healed, mental warfare intensified. This constant shifting of battlegrounds wasn't random, it was targeted disruption of your growing authority. But heaven has been monitoring these battles. God allowed certain struggles to continue not because he abandoned you, but because each battle was developing specific spiritual muscles needed for your coming authority. The resistance wasn't punishment, it was preparation for power. In 2026, you'll notice a fundamental shift. Where you once begged, you'll now declare. Where you once pleaded, you'll now proclaim. Where you once questioned if God heard you, you'll know with certainty that your words align with heaven's agenda. This isn't arrogance, it's alignment. It's not presumption, it's partnership with divine purpose. This recalibrated authority will manifest first in small ways. Conversations will shift when you speak. Atmospheres will change when you enter rooms. People will respond differently to your presence. These subtle changes are external confirmations of internal authority being restored. Stop right here. If you haven't subscribed yet, ask yourself why. Every time you search for clarity, every time you feel overwhelmed, God guides you to messages like this. Don't reject what heaven is trying to give you. Subscribe so you stay connected to the voice that lifts you when no one else does. Learning to operate in this new level of authority will require wisdom. Power without maturity becomes dangerous. Influence without character becomes manipulation. God is restoring your authority at the precise moment when your character has been sufficiently formed to handle it. The waiting wasn't denial, it was divine timing. Chosen one, your elevation will not be quiet. It will disturb people. It will disrupt systems. It will dismantle false peace. Your very presence will become a catalyst that forces others to confront their own spiritual condition. This isn't something to fear, it's something to understand, so you don't misinterpret reactions. Some people will celebrate you publicly while resenting you privately. They'll like your posts, share your content, appear in your audience, all while harboring jealousy they themselves don't fully recognize. Their compliments will feel empty. Their support will seem hollow. Their encouragement will leave you strangely unsettled. Trust this discernment. Your spirit is reading what your eyes cannot see. Others will distance themselves because your growth exposes their stagnation. Your forward motion highlights their circular patterns. Your breakthrough reminds them of prayers they stopped praying. Your persistence convicts their premature surrender. Their withdrawal isn't rejection, it's self-protection from the mirror you've become. Don't miss this crucial warning about your inner circle. Religious spirits will be most disturbed by your elevation. Those who built identities around controlling others through spiritual intimidation will find you suddenly immune to their tactics. Those who use scripture to manipulate will discover their weapons failing against you. Those who appointed themselves as judges over others will lose jurisdiction in your life. Institutions that valued your obedience but feared your questions will struggle with your emerging voice. Systems that benefited from your silence will be threatened by your sound. Organizations that exploited your gifts while ignoring your growth will suddenly offer recognition that feels too late. Do not shrink to make others comfortable. Do not dim your light because it blinds those accustomed to darkness. Do not apologize for occupying space God cleared specifically for you. God did not anoint you to blend in. He anointed you to stand out. This disturbance isn't about creating conflict, it's about catalyzing change. It's not about generating division, it's about exposing what was already divided, but masked by false harmony. Truth is inherently disturbing to systems built on lies. Light is naturally disruptive to darkness, masquerading as enlightenment. Your elevation serves divine purposes beyond your personal success. You're being positioned as a signpost, a waymaker, a standard bearer for others who will follow. The disturbance you create clears paths for many who come after you. There's a breakthrough forming in your life that will not resemble what you expected. God is about to answer prayers you've whispered for years, but through channels you never considered. The divine response won't arrive through familiar routes or expected timing. Heaven is preparing to shock you with supernatural acceleration. What you thought would take years will unfold in months. What seemed impossibly distant will suddenly appear within reach. Doors you stopped knocking on will open without your touch. Connections you couldn't forge through networking will form through divine orchestration. Resources that were consistently withheld will suddenly flow without restriction. God is bypassing human systems to deliver your breakthrough. The approval you sought from gatekeepers will become unnecessary as God establishes direct access. The qualification process you thought was mandatory will be waived as heaven recognizes what earth denied. The traditional path that seemed the only way forward will be replaced by a divine shortcut nobody told you existed. This acceleration isn't just about timing, it's about testimony. God is answering in unconventional ways to ensure everyone recognizes divine intervention. Had your breakthrough come through expected channels, people would have credited your effort, your talent, your connections. But what's coming will so clearly defy human explanation that God's hand will be undeniable. For years, you prayed for specific outcomes while God prepared unexpected answers. You asked for a position. God is giving you a platform. You requested a job. God is releasing an anointing. You begged for relief. God was developing resilience. You sought a mentor. God was making you a model. You asked for a blueprint. God was building an original. This emotional turning point requires a fundamental shift from doubt to expectation, from questioning if God will come through to wondering how he'll surprise you, from focusing on closed doors to anticipating hidden entrances, from counting delays to preparing for acceleration. The unconventional nature of your coming breakthrough will test your spiritual flexibility. Old mindsets will try to reject new methods. Religious traditions will question divine innovations. Human logic will struggle with supernatural intervention. But those who can adapt their expectations will receive what others miss because it arrived in unexpected packaging. Comment, ready for the unusual, if you're prepared for God to move differently than expected in your life. Your breakthrough isn't lost or forgotten. It's just being delivered in a package you wouldn't have chosen, but won't be able to resist opening. With great elevation comes great responsibility. As God accelerates your advancement and amplifies your authority, new spiritual challenges will emerge. These aren't obstacles to stop you, they're tests to strengthen you. The very honor of elevation brings the weight of accountability. Many desire promotion, few prepare for its pressures. The first challenge will be maintaining humility during public recognition. When people finally acknowledge what God has been doing in you privately, pride will knock subtly at your heart. It won't announce itself as arrogance. It will disguise itself as deserved acknowledgement, as justified confidence, as healthy self-appreciation. Only those with keen spiritual discernment will detect this test. The enemy is subtle. He won't tempt elevated ones with obvious sins, but with justified distraction. Busy will replace centered. Activity will replace intimacy. Production will replace presence. Good opportunities will pull you from God opportunities. The danger isn't in obvious wrong, but in diluted right. Not in doing bad things, but in doing good things God never assigned. This next part separates true chosen ones from pretenders. The greatest spiritual conflict in your elevation will be between speed and obedience. Divine acceleration brings momentum, but heavenly assignment requires precision. The faster you move, the harder it becomes to hear nuanced direction. The more influence you gain, the more options appear. The more visible you become, the more voices offer guidance. In this whirlwind, absolute obedience becomes both more difficult and more critical. Many elevated ones stumble not from opposition but from abundance, not from warfare but from welcome, not from hatred but from honor. The test isn't surviving attack but stewarding acceptance. Many who stood strong against criticism fall quickly to compliments. Many who resisted rejection surrender to recognition. When breakthrough comes, when influence expands, when platforms enlarge, what got you there won't sustain you there. The private devotion that fueled your rise becomes even more essential for your continuation. The humble dependence that attracted grace must intensify as responsibility grows. The meticulous obedience that opened doors becomes the key to remaining inside them. Elevation without corresponding character development creates spectacular falls. Influence without internal formation produces public scandals. Visible success without invisible strength ends in devastating failure. God's work in you always precedes His work through you. The depth of your roots will determine the height of your reach. I need to pause right here. Look at how deeply this message is resonating with your spirit. If you haven't subscribed yet, you must ask yourself why. These divine confirmations don't come by accident. God specifically guided you to this word because of what's forming in your life. Don't walk away from the very voice heaven is using to prepare you for what's coming. Subscribe now so the enemy can't disconnect you from the guidance you'll need in this critical season of elevation. Spiritually gifted one, your sensitivity has been both your burden and your blessing. You've felt what others missed. You've detected atmospheres that others walked through unaware. You've carried weights invisible to everyone around you. This heightened awareness made you different from an early age. Feeling too much, caring too deeply, seeing what others couldn't perceive. That sensitivity attracted isolation early in your journey. What others dismissed as emotional or dramatic was actually spiritual discernment developing before its time. When you couldn't explain why certain people, places, or conversations left you drained, you learned to keep these perceptions private. When expressing what you sensed led to rejection, you buried your insights beneath silence. But in 2026, your sensitivity transitions from burden to blueprint. What once overwhelmed you will now orient you. What once left you vulnerable will become your greatest protection. God wasn't punishing you with perception. He was preparing you for precision. He was training you to depend on His voice, not on human validation or approval. The isolation wasn't to hurt you, but to hone you. Time alone with God calibrated your spiritual senses away from the noise of conflicting voices. Those silent seasons weren't abandonment, they were advanced training for assignments requiring unusual discernment. Pain wasn't the purpose, preparation was. Now your sensitivity becomes strategic. You will know when to move and when to wait, when to speak and when silence speaks louder, when to enter and when to exit, when to connect and when to create distance. Timing will matter more than technique. Spiritual precision will accomplish what human effort couldn't achieve. You'll discern motives beneath messages, agendas behind actions, and intentions beneath invitations, not to become cynical, but to become strategic. The weight of awareness you've carried is transforming into wisdom that guides not just your path, but the paths of many connected to your purpose. Your empathy isn't weakness, it's weaponry against darkness. Your emotional depth isn't fragility, it's capacity for powerful ministry. Your ability to feel deeply doesn't make you vulnerable, it makes you valuable in a world numbed by superficial connection. What once made you feel alien now makes you essential. What once caused you pain now gives you purpose. What once led to rejection now leads to recognition. Your sensitivity wasn't a mistake, it was a mission in development. The Lord says, this shift will restore what warfare tried to steal from you. Confidence will return after seasons of questioning every decision. Peace will settle after years of constant vigilance against attack. Joy will no longer feel forced or fleeting, but will flow naturally, even in challenging circumstances. You will laugh again without guilt. You will dream again without fear. You will create again without restraint. Rest will no longer feel unsafe. For too long, stillness triggered anxiety. Slowing down felt dangerous because it gave painful thoughts space to surface. Quietness became something to avoid rather than embrace. But God is healing your nervous system, rewiring your stress responses, and teaching your body that safety is possible again. The continuous state of alert caused by prolonged warfare created patterns of hypervigilance, defensive thinking, and anticipatory anxiety. What began as spiritual protection became physical prison. What started as discernment devolved into distrust. What originated as wisdom hardened into fear. None of this was your fault. It was the natural consequence of extended battle without adequate recovery. But recovery is coming. Restoration is forming. Renewal is approaching. God is establishing rhythms of rest that warfare interrupted. He's restoring sleep that stress stole. He's recovering peace that hypervigilance prevented. He's rebuilding trust that betrayal demolished. You are not weak for needing restoration. You're not failing for requiring recovery. You're not less spiritual for admitting depletion. Even Elijah needed rest after victory. Even Jesus withdrew after ministry. Even Moses needed support when his arms grew weary. Warriors must recover between battles. The Lord is specifically restoring your ability to trust His timing. Past disappointments created a hesitancy to hope. Delayed answers produced doubt about future prayers. Watching others receive what you requested created questions about God's favor. But this restoration includes a profound healing of your relationship with divine timing, recognizing that God's delays always serve purposes your limited perspective couldn't comprehend. With this restoration comes a reframing of your warfare experiences. What felt like failure was actually training. What seemed like defeat was development. What appeared as setback was setup. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was purposeless. Nothing was overlooked by heaven. Type being restored if you can feel this happening already in your spirit. God isn't just restoring what was lost, He's replacing it with increase. Not just repairing what was damaged, but upgrading what was functional. Not just returning what was stolen, but reimagining what was standard. The restoration will exceed the devastation. Chosen one, enemies who worked in secret against you are being exposed not through your confrontation, but through heaven's light. God is handling what you could not fight without losing yourself in the battle. Opposition that operated in darkness is being brought into unavoidable visibility. What I'm about to reveal will change how you see your opposition. Some fought against you openly, their resistance clear and their objections voiced. But others worked through whispers, through subtle undermining, through questions that planted doubt rather than sought answers. They smiled in your presence while speaking against your purpose in your absence. They requested your help while rejecting your counsel. They celebrated your struggles while consoling your spirit. God is exposing hidden agendas not to hurt you, but to heal you from second-guessing your discernment. For too long, you questioned your perception when something felt wrong, but looked right. You dismissed your spiritual alerts as paranoia. You overrode your internal warnings out of fear of appearing judgmental. This exposure confirms what your spirit sensed before your mind could articulate it. This divine light reveals not just individual opposition, but systematic resistance structures and cultures designed to limit authentic spiritual authority. Religious systems that glorify conformity while punishing genuine anointing. Organizational hierarchies that promise empowerment while ensuring control. Relational dynamics that preach freedom while enforcing dependence. But hear this clearly. Vindication is not your assignment. Alignment is. God isn't exposing your enemies so you can engage them, but so you can evade them. Not so you can confront them, but so you can continue past them. Focus on becoming, not on proving. When heaven elevates you, explanations become unnecessary. Your fruit will speak with an authority your words never could. Some exposures will shock you. People you defended were working against you. Mentors you honored were limiting you. Friends you trusted were using you. This knowledge isn't given to create bitterness, but to confirm boundaries. Not to generate resentment, but to guide redirection. God is cleaning house before your new season begins. He's removing hidden opposition before your greatest elevation starts. He's clearing paths of invisible obstacles that would have hindered your advancement. This exposure isn't punishment for them, it's protection for you. Type exposed by light if you're experiencing this divine revelation in your relationships and circumstances. As the new year unfolds, expect a fundamental shift in how you see yourself. Old labels that defined you, even the positive ones, will fall away as God establishes your true identity. Titles you earned, roles you mastered, positions you held, and reputations you built served their purpose, but they never contained the fullness of who you are in the spirit. The imposter syndrome that haunted your achievements will break. That persistent feeling that you don't belong in elevated spaces, that someone will eventually discover you're not qualified, that your successes were accidents rather than assignments, all dissolving as heaven confirms your authentic identity. You'll stop questioning whether you're truly called, whether you're really gifted, whether you actually belong. This identity shift comes through internal peace, not external validation. Not through human affirmation, but through divine confirmation. Not through achieved credentials, but through received revelation. God is aligning your self-perception with heaven's perspective, showing you what He has always seen when He looks at you. Names others called you, limitations others placed on you, expectations others set for you. These external definitions are losing their power over your internal reality. Even good labels become limiting when they define your entirety by one aspect of your capacity. Even accurate descriptions become restrictive when they fix your identity to a single season of expression. You are not what you do. You are not what you've done. You are not what's been done to you. You are not your gifts. You are not your calling. You are not your failures. You are not your successes. You are who God says you are, nothing more, nothing less, nothing else. This identity shift will change how you pray, how you serve, how you create, how you relate, how you rest. Operating from authentic identity, rather than assigned labels, brings a freedom of expression you've only glimpsed before. Decisions become clearer. Boundaries become natural. Purpose becomes obvious. Peace becomes normal. Your spirit will finally agree with what heaven has always said about you. The dissonance between how you see yourself and how God sees you is ending. The constant negotiation between your potential and your perception is resolving. The war between your calling and your confidence is concluding. You are becoming who you've always been in God's eyes. Stay alert, stay humble, stay prayerful. As 2026 opens before you, you will walk into rooms you once only prayed for, carrying authority you once doubted, standing in grace you once begged for. The divine alignment happening now is positioning you for unprecedented impact. Nothing, no betrayal, no delay, no attack was able to cancel what God ordained for your life. What looked like detours were divine redirections. What felt like delays were heavenly preparations. What appeared as denials were actually divine protections. Your story wasn't interrupted, it was intentionally paced by the author who sees its ending. Before this message ends, hear this final word that will carry you through the entire year. Heaven has gone ahead of you into your future. Angels have already been dispatched to critical junctures in your coming journey. Provision has already been allocated for needs you don't yet know you'll have. Solutions are waiting for problems you haven't yet encountered. Divine appointments are scheduled with people you haven't yet met. You're entering rooms where your name has already been mentioned in conversations you weren't present for. You're being discussed in circles you've never accessed. Your reputation in the spirit realm is preceding your arrival in physical locations. What was prophesied over you in private is becoming evident to everyone around you. The struggles that nearly broke you were actually building you. The questions that haunted you were developing your wisdom. The loneliness that wounded you was establishing your independence. The rejection that hurt you was directing you toward divine selection. Nothing was wasted. Everything served a purpose, even the parts of your story you wish you could erase. In 2026, you'll begin to understand why certain doors remained closed despite your persistent knocking. You'll recognize how God's no preserved you for a greater yes. You'll see how relationships that didn't work out would have limited the relationships now forming. You'll understand how opportunities you mourned losing would have restricted the opportunities now emerging. This alignment feels like coming home to a place you've never been but instantly recognize. It feels like remembering something you never learned but somehow always knew. It feels like finding what you weren't consciously seeking but immediately realize you've always needed. Type, "I am aligned," if you're ready to walk in full agreement with heaven in 2026. Before you go, chosen one, don't forget, the fact that you made it to the end of this message means something profound. Your spirit needed this confirmation. Don't walk away without subscribing. It costs nothing, but it means everything for the journey God is taking you on. Many have watched but stopped halfway. Your persistence reveals your readiness. Join our family of chosen ones. Your next breakthrough, the very answer you've been praying for, might be waiting in the next message heaven guides you to.